In Ella's mother's diary, she reveals a shocking fact: Ella's adoptive father is not her biological dad. As Ella grapples with this revelation, a new clue emerges, pointing to a remote cottage that may hold secrets of her family's past. Chapter 16. Are you okay? Liam asked me. I could hear the thudding of his feet pacing the concrete floor beside the bed while I lay, pale and weak, on the thin mattress. I parted my cracked lips while my eyes pried open. I replied, but my dry throat caused my voice to come out rough and weak. Come on, Zach. Where the hell is he? He growled, slamming his fist into the slab of concrete in front of him. Only a second later, a yelp escaped his lips and he was clutching his fist in pain. Idiot, I hissed, assuming he had now broken his hand. I watched with drooping eyes as he stretched his hand and clasped it back into a fist only seconds later. Ugh, I hate being human. I hate feeling pain. It's crap, he grumbled, sliding down the wall so he was sat on the floor with his arms resting on his knees. You're telling me, I scoffed. Constantly, I was drifting in and out of consciousness, and currently, I feared if I was to fall asleep, I wouldn't wake up. I'm sorry, Elle. I don't know what I can do. He sighed, and the guilt and pain clouded his shimmering blue eyes that reminded me so much of Zach. Just help me stay awake, I whispered, and he nodded. Okay, he agreed, pushing up off the floor and joining me on the bed. Almost instinctively, his hand threaded into my hair and his fingers dragged through my long, matted locks. You know, when I was adopted, there was a woman who was a werewolf who lived just outside my village, he started. She knew my mom and dad, and she used to tell me how they were, but never where to find them or any information that could help me find them. She told me about how they had another son, and I was only young, but I got so angry. I trashed my entire house and broke everything in sight before my adopted parents kicked me out. He laughed gently, as though it was a fond memory which I couldn't quite understand. Eventually, I was adopted again, and then I ran away when I started to transform. By that time, I was far from the old lady and heard nothing about my real family, so I went to your mom to help me track them down. He continued while my eyes grew heavier and heavier. I couldn't understand how they could get rid of me but not their other son. And I guess I will never know, but I did know that if I ever met my brother, I would hate him with every fiber of my being. I swore to myself I would kill him and prove to my parents they gave up the wrong son. A shiver ran down my spine at Liam's words, and I couldn't help but feel a pit of dread in my stomach, being so helpless and weak beside him. And then I guess I grew up a little and I realized how completely alone I was. And when I heard our parents were dead, I lost all hope of having a family. I thought I would be alone for the rest of my life, he continued. All I had was Zach, and despite my slight resentment, I was so desperate to not be alone. And then I met him, and he is so strong and so brave, and he loves you more than I have ever loved anything, and I can't help but be completely amazed by him. A smile crawled onto my face while my eyes drooped further closed. Neither can I hummed in agreement. I didn't think I could love someone that much, and I never in a million years thought anyone would love me that much. I laughed lightly. I used to think I was so strong up until I met Zach. I never relied on anyone, never needed a mate. I was going to rule the world on my own. Liam laughed gently behind me, still stroking his fingers through my hair. When I first met him, I was so weak. It was like he completely broke my wolf and I was this little girl again. It's weird, really. He broke me and made me weak, but then built me back up again. Stronger than ever, but with him holding me up. He forced himself into the foundations of my strength, and now I think without him I would completely crumble. Liam gently kissed my temple before speaking. I don't think he is going anywhere, he whispered. Liam? My voice had lost all strength and came out as a shaky whisper. Yeah? Please be there for him, I begged, clutching the hand that wasn't at air with my own small, trembling one. His skin was warm around my own grain, cold flesh. What do you mean? He whispered back, his voice wavering slightly. My eyes were sunken and soulless as the lids fought hopelessly to stay open. And tell him, I started, forgetting my words as darkness blanketed my sight. Ella? Liam's tone was frantic and shaky as I felt him haul my body against him. Ella, stay awake, remember, he demanded, shaking me gently. I can't. Liam, I am going to die, I murmured, still blinded by the jet black that surrounded me. Tell him that I love him. My words came out slow and soft, my head lolling to the side against his solid chest now. You can tell him yourself, fella. Please. He snapped, shaking my numbing body a little more violently. I felt completely limp against him as a tear peeked out and slipped down my cheek. Liam? It was a pleaded self. Ella, stay awake, okay, please. His volume matched my own as hopelessness dripped from his tone. Liam? I gripped his arm a little tighter as the voice bounced off the concrete walls, followed by a slamming sound. I'd know that voice anywhere, and my heartbeat picked up a little, fluttering in my chest. Zach? Liam's voice drenched with relief as the thudding of feet on concrete pattered in the background. Your timing could not be better, he hissed, shaking me again slightly. Ella. It was louder this time. He was so close to me. Tingles started to spread over my skin. Zach. The edges of my lips curved upwards, and I wished I had the strength to peel my eyes open, to lift my heavy head and move my lifeless body so I was facing him. So I could see his beautiful eyes that would be shimmering with a concoction of relief and fear right now. So I could run my blue, gray hands through his soft, thick locks. So I could enclose myself in his strong, safe arms and stay there for as long as possible. Oh, here, sweetheart. You're okay, he whispered, and it was a promise. And I knew Zach kept his promises. Strong, protective arms curled around me, and soon my nostrils were flooded with his familiar scent. I love you, I croaked out before my head tipped to the side and I collapsed against him, fading into the spinning abyss of black. Chapter 17. My eyes fluttered open a fraction before white light slipped beneath my eyelids and blinded me. I let out a croak-wide groan at the thumping in my head and the heaviness of my eyes. When they finally peeled open, I instantly recognized my bedroom and felt an immediate feeling of safety. I was home. Here, drink this, Zach's soft, husky voice ordered before a glass of clear water appeared in my vision. My eyes continued to droop as I tried to focus on his perfect face. Nice to see you too, I grumbled with a huff. He moved forward in a blur before his soft yet rough lips were moving against mine, clinging to them desperately and filling my mouth with the familiar taste of him. There, now drink this, he ordered with his usual daring edge in his tone. I leaned forward so my lips were on the cool glass, and he tipped it slowly so the cold, refreshing liquid slid down my throat. He didn't stop until I had gulped down the entire glass, and once I did, my vision started to clear a little. You need to drink lots, he told me with a gentle, worried and sympathetic smile. I simply nodded in response and felt around on the bed until my hand was secured in his. "How are you feeling?" "I'm okay," I assured him, shuffling over on the bed. Big mistake. As soon as I moved, it was like the whole world flipped around and spun for a while, making my own head spin with it. "Whoa, careful." Zach steadied me so the spinning would stop and then took another glass of water from the bedside table. I took a long sip before he took it back and smiled. "You will be okay once the moon rises," he told me. "Okay," I responded. Taking in his features now, I could see properly. His sparkling blue eyes had dulled slightly and had dark purple bags hanging beneath them from his obvious lack of sleep. His usual complexion had light and a few shades, giving him a deathly white color except the dark hollows of his eyes. His lips were dry and cracked and his clothes looked scruffy and crumpled. "Zach, when was the last time you ate or slept?" I asked him, raising an eyebrow at him. "I will sleep when I know you're okay," he replied, tucking a strand of my hair behind my ear and keeping his eyes constantly on me. "I am okay," I assured him, leaning forwards and pressing my lips to his, kissing him gently and lovingly before tangling my fingers in his hair and biting on his bottom lip while his tongue explored my mouth. Slowly, we pulled away with our foreheads pressed together and our breaths short and I could see. I smiled. "God, I missed you, sweetheart," he breathed, running his hand up and down my arm. "I missed you too," I told him. My hands cupped his face, my thumb rubbing over his stubbled chin while my eyes stayed locked on his. "But don't change the subject. You need to eat and get some sleep," I instructed, pulling away and leaning back against the headboard. "Baby, let me take care of you, okay? I am fine now you're home." He smiled solemnly and I knew that us being apart was just as hard for him as it was for me. "Lie down." I stared for a moment, raising my eyebrows at him. "Sweetheart, lie down," he ordered in the daring voice I was so used to and that I had missed. As slow as possible, I lowered myself so I was lay on my back, wondering what exactly Zach was going to do. Ever so carefully, he brushed my shirt up to just under my bra and ran his finger lightly over the cut on my stomach. "It's already healing," he told me. "How did it happen?" "I don't know," I told him, and his eyes flitted from the cut up to my face, confusion and written in them. I woke up with it. Zach helped me back into a sitting position before moving to sit beside me on the bed. Not long after, Liam entered the room with a tray of food. "Hey, are you okay?" I asked him, trying to get up, but Zach held me down. "I'm fine. Are you?" he asked, putting the tray at the end of the bed before rounding it to stand beside me. "I'm fine," I told him. "She just needs to sit still and eat." Zach answered for me as I spoke. I shot him a half-assed glare, but was so happy to be home and to see him again, care how overprotective he was being. "Here." Liam handed me one of the 3 bowls on the trays and I immediately dug into the huge bowl of soup. "Thanks," I muttered, scoffing down spoonfuls of the food after spending a few days without anything in my stomach. It didn't take long before all 3 of us were placing our empty bowls back on the tray. As soon as my hand left the bowl, Zach was tugging me backwards so I was sat on his lap with his arms tightly wrapped around me. "I have a question," he announced, rubbing the back of my hand with his thumb. "Okay?" I asked, playing with his fingers in my lap. "Why were you 2 lay in bed together with you sleeping on my brother's naked chest?" He growled in my ear. "Oh," Liam turned to leave, but Zach grabbed his wrist. That's a good question. Baby, relax. He took his shirt off and used it to stop the bleeding, and I was just lay on him because, well, I looked at Liam to see him with wide eyes and a clueless look on his face. He is comfy. I shrugged. He hummed behind me, twiddling a piece of my hair in his fingers. He then turned to Liam with a daring look in his eye. Keep your shirt on around my girlfriend, he warned. Gotcha? Liam nodded, and with that, he was gone. You better not sleep with my brother again, he growled, pulling gently on the strand of hair twisted around his finger. I giggled slightly and turned to fully face him. I didn't sleep with him. I nudged him and buried my head in his shirt. You shared a bed with him, he grumbled. No, he slept on the floor and let me have the bed. I corrected him, and after that he was silent. We stayed in that position, with me on his lap with my face nestled against his shoulder while he played with my hair and held me against him. It was comfort for us, being wrapped up in each other and knowing the other was okay. Get some sleep, sweetheart, he whispered, maneuvering me so I was laid back beneath the covers. He gently kissed my forehead and then my lips. I'll be up in a second, okay? I smiled up at him and he strode out of the room, closing the door as he did. I waited a few minutes before shuffling to the edge of the bed and dragging myself to the door. I clicked it open a fraction and then clambered back into the bed, burying myself under the covers. Hey, I heard Liam's voice from downstairs now that I wasn't sealed in the soundproof room. Hey, Zach replied, and then the sound of a chair scraping across the floor reached my ears. I know I haven't really spoken to you since this morning, so are you okay? I smiled slightly, my heart warming at the concerns Zach had about Liam. I'm fine, he responded. A little moonlight and some damn food and I was good. He laughed. Good. There was a long pause and I was beginning to think that was it. Thank you, Zach finally said. For what? Liam sounded genuinely confused at the gratitude, and I could picture his face scrunching up in confusion. As much as I hate to admit it, I am glad that you took off your shirt and stopped the bleeding, he admitted. I know it was freezing down there and being human would have made it harder to deal with. I also know you slept on the floor so she could have the bed. So thank you. I love her, you know, Liam replied, and I froze. What? Not in the same way you do. But I do. She is like a sister, he explained, and a breath of relief flew from my lips. Thank God he wasn't going to die at the hands of his brother. Glad you're okay. And I am glad you got your girl back. I could practically hear the smirk. Now take her advice and get some sleep. You look worse than she does, he laughed. Yeah, okay. You too? I can tell you didn't get your beauty sleep on the concrete floor. Zach mocked and they both chuckled. Thanks, Liam started, for getting us out. I didn't just come for her, you know. You're my brother, he stated. Yeah, I know. There was another pause and then Zach spoke once again. Night, Liam. Night, bro. A smile latched onto my face as I listened, and it grew when our bedroom plunged into darkness and a pair of arms snaked around my waist, holding me against a warm body where I knew I was safe. Chapter 18. Early the next morning, I awoke in Zach's strong arms, pinning me to his chest while his body heat in the blanket warmed me. I was so cozy and toasty that I drifted back to sleep until the cold air brushing over me stirred me again. Sorry, baby? Zach smiled gently. slipping out from beneath the covers and tucking them tightly around my body. "I'm going training for a bit." I winced a little, hoping to spend the morning with him. "Catching up." "No, 𝐶𝐬, I begged, reaching out to grab his arm. "Sweetheart, I will be back in a bit, okay? I'm just going for a quick run before it gets too warm," he explained, kissing my cheek before stripping in the middle of the room, causing my stare to linger. "Fine," I huffed with a pout, rolling onto my back and glaring at the ceiling, not being able to look at his perfect body any longer. He was silent for a while, scuffing around the room, changing and grabbing his shoes before he appeared hovering over the top of me. Put the pouty lips away. He kissed them gently. "I will be back in an hour at most. Stay in bed and I'll make us breakfast when I get home," he promised and rolled off the bed. I drifted into a light sleep for just over half an hour, but then gave up. It wasn't as easy to sleep when my radiator had gone for a run. Without Zach's arms, I felt cold and a little less safe, feeling cautious to close my eyes. Eventually, I scrambled out from beneath the covers and made my way downstairs to the kitchen after a quick shower. "Hey," I greeted Liam, who sat in the kitchen in silence, probably in charge of keeping me safe while Zach was out. "What are you doing?" he snapped, jumping up off the seat and darting across the room to stand in front of Liam. I stared at him in confusion, scrunching up my brows as utter fear and worry washed over Liam's features. "Get back upstairs," he ordered, pushing me backward slightly. "Zach will kill you and me," he grumbled. "What's wrong?" I asked him, brushing his hands off me. "You're supposed to stay in bed. He will go mad if he sees you are up," Liam explained. "Liam, the moon healed me. I started before the sound of a door swinging open made me jump." "What are you doing up?" Zach growled from behind me, rushing to my side and wrapping his arms around my waist. I tried to get her to go back up. Liam defended, holding his arms up in surrender. "I have work to do," I explained, shooting Liam a glare for snitching and wriggling out of Zach's hold well. Trying. "Sweetheart, you need rest. I told you not to leave the bed." He sent me his challenging look before starting to walk me towards the stairs. I fought against him, trying to stop his fast pacing, but received his daring look, only intensified. "Sweetheart, he warned me." "Zach." My tone matched his and a small flash of dominance crashed against him. "I have work to do, and I'm fine," I assured him, lifting my shirt up to just below my brayless chest. "See." I showed them my faded scar on my stomach, the pale red line only being visible in the light. "Don't care," Zach snapped. "Zach, I am not a cub," I growled, shattering his stubbornness with a wave of dominance. He stared for a moment, resisting as much as possible before pushing me into the office and slamming the door. I suddenly felt small and helpless as he glared at me, sending a shudder down my spine as his eyes darkened with anger and desire. "Zach," I whispered, scooting backwards. "Sweetheart, don't ever use your dominance on me," he snarled as he strode towards me. As soon as he finished, his lips crashed onto mine. The kiss was rough and punishing, tugging on my lip and exploring my mouth with his tongue. I knew there was no use fighting him for dominance in that sense. When it came to physical contact, Zach was in charge and I was more than happy to submit to his magic touch and skilled tongue. His hands pulled me violently towards him, pinning me against him and deepening the kiss further. I tugged on the roots of his hair, causing a deep groan from the back of his throat. When we finally pulled away, we were both breathless, with our foreheads pressed together and our eyes locked onto each other's. "I missed you," I breathed. Zach's hand ran down my arms and around my waist before pulling my shirt over my head and starting to remove pajama shorts. "I'm going to show you just how much I missed you," he growled. Before I knew it, we were both naked and I was lay across the carpeted floor with him above me, his lips locked onto my breast and my nails scraping over his bare back. "Zach, please," I begged him and met his smirking lips in a kiss as he positioned himself at my opening. "What are you doing?" he asked me later that day as I sat in my office chair, reading through some papers. Obviously, I won the argument with Zach, but he'd been watched all day while I worked by either my boyfriend or his brother like I was a child. Trying to find some information about what happened to us, I explained, watching out the corner of my eyes as he leaned against the door with his muscular arms folded over his chest. "What do you mean?" He raised an eyebrow and I pushed the paper aside and turned to him. "I want answers. I want to know why the hell Liam and I were the only ones taken. I want to know who the fuck stabbed me so I can tear their throat out. I want to know why I was the only one stabbed, and I want to know what stabbed and what psychos thought they could kill me," I ranted, clenching my jaw as I spoke. "And have you found anything?" He raised a brow and I frowned. "No," I grumbled, sifting through the piles of papers left to read. "Where did you find us?" I asked him. "You were about 20 miles from here in the woods in Wild Gate," he told me as I pulled out a map from my father's drawer. "What are all those markings?" he asked, pointing to the circles on the map. I shrugged. "I don't know." The popping sound filled the silence as I took the cap off the pen and circled the large wooded area in Wild Gate. "I wonder if that's near wolf territory." I glanced to Zach to see him look away. "What?" I asked him, his fists clenched tightly until his knuckles turned a pasty white shade. "Zach." I stood up from the desk and rounded it so I was in front of him. I took his fists in my hands and rubbed my thumb over his tight knuckles until he loosened up a little. Once he did, I curled one hand around his and placed the other on his jaw, turning his head so he could face me. I could feel his stubble reach in beneath my palm and felt the heat from his skin. His eyes were clouded with emotion, too many for me to have even a clue how he was feeling. I pressed my lips to his and brushed my thumb over his cheek. "What's wrong?" I asked him gently. His icy blue eyes melted when he looked at me and instead glistened with love. "Wild Gate," he started, tightening his grip on my hand. "Used to be my pack's territory." He finished and my heart hit the floor with a thud. Chapter 19. "I don't like this," I repeated, curling my hands tighter around my scorching mug of hot chocolate. "Relax, baby." Zach's fingers separated my locks of hair in a soothing manner. His warm lips pressed against my cheek for a moment, and in that second, I could breathe easier. "I don't like it at all. Something just doesn't feel right," I grumbled, downing the scalding liquid in my cup. "What do you mean?" Liam asked from opposite me, watching me with one raised brow. "I mean, they took me and you, and the only thing we have in common is Zach," I replied, turning to Zach. "What if the purpose of taking us wasn't to put us in danger, but to put you in danger?" I wasn't attacked. Nobody was spotted at the border, and surely if I was the target, they would have just killed me when they knocked us all out. He rationalized, and I took a steadier breath. "Yeah, I guess," I sighed, leaning into him a little more. "I still think there is something going on," I told him. "Me too," He nodded. Me too, Liam agreed, staring into the distance, deep in thought. Not long after, the doorbell rang and Liam left to answer it while Zach peppered kisses over any skin that was available to him. Hey, I heard Ryder's voice shout from the hallway. We are coming in, so I hope you two are decent. He laughed. Shut up. Jordan giggled. Ella. Alexi sang, skipping into the kitchen with a grin plastered on her face. Hey. I waved, hopping off my seat to hug them all. Hey, are you okay? We wanted to give you time before we came to see you, but we missed you, Jordan explained. I told her, throwing my arms around her. Are you okay, man? Ryder turned to Liam, who nodded in response before the two started a lengthy conversation. So, Al, are we okay to stay for a bit? Caroline asked me. I turned to Zach, who nodded, and to Liam, who was still in deep conversation with Ryder, and nodded. Great, because we all brought our stuff to stay the night. Mason laughed before throwing himself onto the sofa. We all joined him, cramping together on the sofas or sprawling on the floor, listening to Ryder explain a dream he had last night. Tears streamed down my face from laughing so hard, and I realized in that moment that I truly loved my friends. And then, a gorilla appeared and started dancing with her instead. He laughed, making us all howl with laughter until we couldn't breathe. I watched as Lexi laughed from the other sofa with her wicked, devilish giggle that always made me crack up. However, the funniest part of the story was when Blake snorted from laughing and set us all off again. Let's play Pictionary, Caroline suggested, hopping to her feet after we had scoffed off our pizzas. She pinned a large sheet of paper to the living room wall and grabbed a pen from my office. She started by drawing a long, thin oval shape in the middle of the page. A penis? Ryder guessed, making us all laugh. A sausage? Liam guessed before Caroline carried on. She then drew a large triangle over the long, thin ovum. I stared at it, laughing along with Jordan for a while. Come on, guys. She sighed, drawing some squiggly lines either side of the penis-shaped thing. We all stared blankly, trying to hold in our laughs as she grumbled and continued. Oh, I got it. Ryder cheered and we all turned to him. It's Mason's dick. He smirked and we all laughed, rolling our eyes while Mason grunted a response to Ryder. Caroline continued to draw something that looked like a head. Dickhead. I guess that she shot me a glare while Zach chuckled along with me. She then drew the eyes and colored one in. Cyclops. Zach frowned. Black? Mason asked. Black-eyed penis. Jordan shouted and we all looked at her for a moment before erupting into a series of laughter. Once we all caught our breath, we realized we still hadn't managed to guess it, so looked back to the drawing. Caroline added a cross with a circle in the middle to the center of the triangle and looked back at us expectantly. So it's not someone with a black eye. Blake mumbled. I knew he would be the most angry if he didn't get it. Blake loved to be the best at everything and had always hated losing. A pirate? He questioned, and Caroline's face lit up. Okay. Pirate. We all shouted, excited to have a lead. Oh, it's a pirate ship. Mason yelled and Caroline screamed in relief while we all howled with laughter. How is that a ship car? I laughed. A penis. She yelled at us. Black guy's penis. She shouted in utter disbelief while we all laughed. I love their music. Liam laughed and we all joined once again. Oh no. I hid my face in Zach's shirt, keeping one eye on the TV and clinging to the material tightly in my fist. "Don't go in," Ryder warned the character in the movie as the creepy background music floated through the room. "Don't do it," Mason shouted, holding Caroline in his arms and using her shoulder to hide his face. "No. No, don't." Jordan winced as the handle slowly turned. "Well, whatever happens, she deserves it now." "We want her." Caroline laughed and we all nodded in agreement. "Stupid idiot should just go home to that gorgeous husband of hers," Lexi grumbled. "He's gorgeous though, isn't he?" Jordan whispered as the character stepped into the room. "I agree. He's seriously hot," I added, my voice muffled by Zach's shirt. "I have never understood you girls and your obsession with Leonardo DiCaprio." Blake furrowed his brows. "I don't know what it is. He just does this thing," Caroline explained. "Thing?" Mason raised his eyebrows at us. "Yeah? A thing," Lexi agreed. "Guys don't have obsessions with girls like that." Ryder laughed. "Kate Moss," Jordan said, and they all stared at her. "Yeah, well, she is hot," Liam explained. "What about her is hot?" I asked. "She is just. I don't. She Blake drifted? Has a thing?" Lexi asked, but before they could answer, a scream erupted from the TV, making us all jump and squeal from the fear. Eventually, our fear faded into laughter as we all recalled each other's faces as the scene occurred, and we ended up talking over the film for the rest of it. "So you think something is going on?" Mason asked me later that night. I lay across the floor, slouching against the sofa, tangled in Zach's body in the sheets. "Yeah, there has to be." I shrugged. "I mean, we were all there and they only took me and Liam," I replied, thinking over the events of that night. "You went to the doctor, right?" I asked Mason, and he nodded. Wolfsbane petals are poisonous to werewolves, but it can also harm humans if they breath it in for a long enough time, so Mason had to get checked out since it obviously affected him too. "Well, other than the obvious," Jordan started, glancing from Zach back to me. "What else do the two of you have in common that could make you targets to someone?" I glanced to Liam to see him looking right back at me, flitting his eyes from my face to Zach's and then back again. "I have no idea," I whispered in reply. "Chapter 20, what are you doing?" "Beautiful," Zach asked the next morning. I glanced up from the paper in my hand to see him filling the doorway to my office with his muscular arms folded across his chest. "Nothing," I mumbled, flicking over the page to continue reading. "I swear if you're working at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning, I will drag you to bed and tie you down just so you can sleep," he quipped, striding into the room and leaning over the desk. I lifted my gaze to his and smiled mischievously. "Just so I can sleep." I raised an eyebrow. "You can't think of anything else we could do with me tied to the bed?" The playful glint in his eyes darkened with clouds of lust, sending flutters through my stomach. He leaned forward so our lips were mere millimeters apart. "Don't tempt me." I giggled and pecked a kiss on his lips before leaning back. "It's not technically work," I told him. "I'm not bothered about the technicalities," he growled. "You are reading?" "They are my mom's diaries," I told him, pointing to the pile of pink leather-covered books beside me as well as the one in my hand. "Why are you reading them now?" he asked, shuffling through the huge pile and reading the dates imprinted on the covers. "Thought reading about my mom's memories would help me forget the feeling of impending doom lodged in my stomach." I laughed. Zach rolled his eyes and took my hand, tugging me up from my seat and rounding the desk. One of his long, calloused fingers trailed down my cheek before his plump lips clasped over mine. His one hand curled around my chin while his thumb made small circles on my cheek. His other hand pulled my waist closer to his, and immediately I felt his hard-on press against my thigh. I let a light moan slip out from between my lips, letting his tongue venture deeper into my mouth. When we finally pulled away, I was panting and extremely turned on. "I would love nothing more than to keep kissing you right now," he stated, smirking down at my flustered face. "However, my brother and all our friends are in the next room, wondering where you went." Fine," I grumbled, following his lead out of the study towards the living room and the crowd of friends staring. I kept the one diary in my hand so I could keep reading while trying to be sociable. "You guys were doing it, weren't you?" Ryder grinned at me, wiggling his eyebrows playfully. I reached for the nearest pillow and launched it at his head, smiling proudly when it landed smack in the middle of his forehead. "That's your one and only warning to shut up," I told him, raising my eyebrows at him in a warning. "Apparently you weren't very good, Zach, because she seems more grouchy than when you two disappeared." He smirked and Zach growled beside me. "I warned you," I said in a sing-song voice, releasing strong, pulsing waves of dominance and sending them crashing over him. He groaned from the sharp pains that rained down on him and snarled at me. All right. "Apologize," I ordered. He sighed. "Sorry," he grumbled, and I reined it back in, releasing him from the stronghold. "I hate when you do that," he huffed. "I know." I grinned and hopped onto the arm of the chair Zach had sat on. Immediately, he tugged at my waist until I slid down onto his lap and his arms held my back flushed against his chest. "What's that?" Caroline nodded towards the pink book resting on my lap with a curious look on her face. "My mom's diary. I found loads of them locked in the office with my dad's confidential things," I told her, and she narrowed her eyes. "Why were they locked away?" Alexia asked, sprawled across the floor beside me. I shrugged. "Maybe they contain pack secrets or something. Or my dad just didn't want to lose them." "I would have thought he would have shown you," Blake said as I flicked through the pages, skimming the recalls of her days. I simply shrugged in reply, reading thoroughly through the rest of the diary with a smile on my face. The others chatted aimlessly about whatever came to mind, but their voices were a blur in the background. "Ella?" I snapped my head up to see them all staring at me. "Yeah?" "What did she write about that's so interesting?" Mason asked with a raised brow. "Well," I smiled sheepishly. He laughed as Ryder lunged forward and peeled the book from my hand, dashing to the other side of the room. "Ryder?" I scrambled off Zach's lap to chase him and stopped when he cleared his throat. "Ella is the most beautiful baby I have ever seen, and I cannot believe how in love with her I am," he read with a chuckle. "I only wish things would have happened a little differently. I would give anything for my parents to have been able to meet her before they passed. I know they would have fallen in love with her and spoiled her like she deserves." Small tears brimmed my eyes as he read on. "I also wish that my beautiful daughter hadn't come into this world amidst the chaos we are trying to deal with. I will do anything to keep her safe from it all, but that doesn't help me sleep at night." "What does that mean, Elle?" Ryder asked. "I have no idea." My voice was quieter than expected. I cleared my throat. "I guess maybe there were pack problems," I suggested, and he shrugged. "Well, what does it say next?" Liam asked 𝐿𝐻𝐻. "Alex is the most incredible father, just as I knew he would be. I love watching him with Ella. He takes care of her and protects her and coaxes sweet laughs from her all the time. He treats her like his own daughter and… what in the… My heart stopped beating for a few seconds and I stood, frozen on the spot as the words sunk in. Like his own daughter. I wished I was sitting because my knees buckled and my legs gave way beneath me, causing me to stumble into Zach's hard chest. I had no idea when he stood, but his arm steadied my shaking body while I waited for Ryder to continue reading and tell me it wasn't what it sounded like. That can't be true. It must be a mistake. Right? I mean, he is definitely my dad, so whatever that means. It isn't what I think. He was my dad. He was… I mean, sure, I look more like my mom than him, but we had the same. The same. I was gasping for something like a fish out of water. I don't really remember, but I would have known if he wasn't my dad, so it's wrong. Right, Ryder? If you keep reading, you can prove it's wrong. Right? I looked at him with so much hope. Desperation, direct from my tone and his expression contorted into a stricken one. Elle, he spoke softly, apologetically, and it felt like a dagger going straight through my heart. Oh my God. The tears fell. I couldn't keep them at bay any longer. He wasn't my real dad. Everything was all just one big lie. Oh my God, I repeated, pulling out of Zach's arms and sprinting out of the room to the office where nobody could hear the sobs that seemed to rack through me. Ella. Shouts followed me as I slammed the door shut and locked it, crumbling into a ball on the floor as the tears trickled down my face. Chapter 21. Ella opened the door. Zach's gentle voice called from outside the office. Gradually, I had managed to get my breathing under control, and now, small tears just trickled down my face every few moments. Ella, please. I could hear his desperation and guilt gnawed at me for shutting him out literally. But I couldn't speak because my throat had run completely dry and my knees were so weak I couldn't stand. Ella? The desperation morphed into a warning, and for some reason, I found the stern, daring tone to be comforting. It was Zach. Ella, open the door or I will knock it down. He threatened, and I knew he would. I felt awful for worrying him, so dragged myself along the floor and twisted the key so he could enter. As soon as I moved away, he burst into the room, shutting the door behind him. His eyes scanned the room and quickly landed on my curled up form on the floor. In seconds, Zach sunk to his knees and the familiar warmth of his hold wrapped around me. Ella? I'm sorry. A gentle kiss pressed to my forehead, and one of his large hands found my small, trembling ones. I can't believe he wasn't my dad. I sniffed, clinging to Zach's hand like it was the only thing keeping me breathing. I felt as though if I let go, I would fall. Ella, listen to me. He was your dad, okay? Biological or not, he loved you so much and he would have done anything for you. He dropped my hand and laid both of his on either side of my jaw, forcing me to face him. He was your dad, sweetheart. I sat numbly in silence, sinking further into his arms while my mind swam with questions. Questions that nobody was around to answer. Thoughts and feelings clogged up my mind until I felt like my head was about to explode unless I found release, so I pulled out of Zach's arms and wobbled on my shaking legs as I rose to my feet. I'm going for a run, I whispered, my cracked lips unable to part more than a hair's width. Zach jumped up beside me and clasped his hand around mine. I'll come with you, he offered gently, although I knew that it wasn't going to be up for discussion. I simply nodded before silently traipsing up to my room to change into some running clothes. Zach did the same, watching me closely to make sure I didn't suddenly break on the spot. Once we were out of the house, I forgot everything and just allowed my legs to carry me up the mountainside through the thick woodland. I slipped between trees, barely slowing to navigate a path and just barreling across the valley, no direction in mind. In fact, nothing was on my mind. Not my father, real or adopted, not my mother's secrets and lies, not Zach's worry for me. All I focused on was the wind whipping at my hair and the debris-covered ground crunching beneath my fast steps. After a long run across a dozen or so miles, I found myself slowing near a particular lake and being greeted with two perfectly straight, sharp-edged, tall headstones. "Sweetheart." Zach's voice barely whispered and I jumped, forgetting he was beside me as I stared emotional as why at the stones. I no longer knew what to feel. I turned to Zach to see concern etched across his face. "Let's go back," I muttered before taking off in the direction of the village, unable to look at the beautiful icy blue eyes I loved so much flooded with worry. As soon as the house was in sight, I slowed to a walk, panting a little from the rapid pace I had sprinted back with. My forehead dotted with beads of sweat that I quickly swiped away before pushing the front door open. The quiet chatter from the living room silenced as soon as I panicked, suddenly feeling everything I wanted to block out come rushing back. Tears trickled down my cheeks and I had to hold in my sobs as I dashed back into the office, closely followed by my boyfriend. He lowered us both onto the sofa, cradling me against him while I cried softly in his arms. We sat in content silence for a long while, me basking in every ounce of warmth and comfort he was providing with just his presence alone. Being in his arms was like nothing else. It was where I was safest and happiest, and the rest of the world and the problems along with it faded away. But Zach wouldn't let me get away with avoiding the problems that easily, and deep down I knew that. Which is why I wasn't at all surprised when he gently whispered, "Are you okay?" I hesitated, slipping my hand beneath Zach's shirt, tracing the outline of his ABS with my nails. I didn't want to lie to him, but the words "I'm fine" slipped from my lips. My voice came out weaker and shakier than I anticipated, and he saw straight through me. "Baby, you don't have to lie to me." His tone was the familiar daring one, and despite everything, it brought a smile to my face. "It just hurts." How did I not know he wasn't my father? All this time, they were lying to me, I muttered. He turned me to face him again and lightly kissed my lips. "He will always be your father's sweetheart. They both loved you, and if they lied, it was to protect you." "Protect me from what?" My eyes met his own beautiful icy blue ones that were currently clouded with worry. Our lips locked in a gentle kiss before he tucked a strand of my hair behind my ear and frowned. "I don't know, baby. I'm sorry. He wasn't my father," I whispered shakily. "I don't know who my dad is. Sweetheart." He took my hands in his and cradled them against his chest. "Alex Reed was your dad, okay? Just because he wasn't blood doesn't mean he wasn't family." He pulled me to my feet and held me against him for a while. My head was buried in his shirt and my hands ran up and down his back. When I pulled away, our lips molded against each other in a fast, desperate manner. His lips were soft and strong, pulling and sucking on mine. Our tongues tackled for dominance, dancing in my mouth before he forced me into submission and let his tongue explore my mouth. The kiss was soft but passionate, and I felt myself melting into him. Eventually, we both stopped for air, our foreheads pressed together. Our breaths intermingled in a concoction of pants and gasps. "Come with me," he ordered, his voice husky. I nodded, following him from the room and back into the living room where everyone was quietly chatting again. Hey Jordan smiled sweetly, bringing every honest attention to us. Immediately, I could see her smile was forced and worry swam in the recesses of her beautiful green eyes. Liam quickly stepped closer to me, kissing my cheek delicately. "You okay, sweetheart?" he asked, his own eyes wide and searching. I nodded silently, words escaping me. Feeling every onus eyes on me as Liam retook his seat, I backed up into Zach's safety and warmth. "Sweetheart, listen to me. Blood doesn't mean family. Your family are all right here, and none of us are blood. He was your dad. Blood or not," he told me, kissing the side of my face. I scanned the room, looking into every pair of worried eyes with so much love and gratitude. These people were the constant in my life, and Zach was right, they were family. He's right? Ryder nodded in agreement. "Yeah? I know." I nodded, melting further into his arms. "Nothing's changed." It came out as a question, and Zach stared deep into my eyes. "Nothing's changed." It was a promise. Just like when he told me he loved me. He was so sure, and that immediately reassured me. "Wanna watch a movie?" Caroline offered, clearly not oblivious to the heaviness that hung in the air. Last night had been so much fun, and I wanted to get back to that. "Definitely." I nodded, and everyone else quickly agreed. Soon we were all sat around on the sofa, me tucked in Zach's arms with my family around me. Our laughter echoed through the room, and we stuffed our faces with popcorn. I smiled, taking in the way we're all squished together, completely comfortable with each other. My oldest friends and newest friends all simply enjoying each other's company. We were family, an unconventional, multi-species, messed up family. And I realized that was all I wanted. My unconventional family was pretty amazing. Chapter 22. The next day, I sat in the window of the office with a tall glass of fruit cocktail that Liam had made for me in my mother's diary, rereading the pages again and again until the words were imprinted in my brain. I was so engrossed in the words scribbled in her beautiful handwriting. I didn't use Zach return from his training session or sneak into the office to stand behind me. "Why can I smell alcohol?" he asked, sending me jolting up in the chair while my heart thundered violently in my chest. "Don't do that," I scolded, hoping to distract him from his own question. "You scared me," I breathed. "Sorry, sweetheart." He pressed a light kiss to my lips, darting his tongue out to swipe over my lower lip before he pulled back. "You taste like it too." I scrunched up my face, confused by his words and his scowl. "Alcohol," he clarified. "What is that?" I followed his pointed finger to my glass and rolled my eyes. "It's a cocktail. It's boiling and I need to stay refreshed." I shrugged. "And drunk, apparently." "Zach," I sighed, shaking my head. "Why does it matter?" "Because," he started, "I promised your dad I would always take care of you, and you are underage, so you will have to find another drink." He claimed my lips in his a second later, coaxing me into giving in to him, which I did for a second. When he pulled away, smirking victoriously, I crossed my arms over my chest. "You drank scotch with him and you still drink it," I challenged. "My dad didn't ask anyone to take care of me. I made a promise and I always keep my promises," he explained. "Technically, he isn't my dad," I told him, but he raised a brow in his usual daring manner. "I'm afraid, my dearest love, that I am your alpha. Not the other way around, so you will just have to care of me in other ways." To hint at what other ways he could take care of me, I gently bit his 𝐊𝐬𝐵, breathing lightly over his skin when he groaned. "Ella," leaning back. I grinned. Zach losing his control gave me great satisfaction, and while he attempted to compose himself, I took a long slurp of my drink. "Why are you reading that again?" he suddenly asked, snatching the diary from my hands and scowling. "I was reading the good parts," I explained, jumping to snatch it back, but he held it high above his head. "Liar." He looked up to see the page writer read aloud yesterday and growled. "Zach, give it back," I grumbled, jumping towards him again. I struggled to reach for a while, hating the stupid smirk sprawled over his face. "Zach," I snarled, hopping up and curling my legs around his hips so I was straddling him. He held a certain gleam in his eyes when he leaned down to kiss me. Perfect. He smiled, taking in my position. I gasped as the realization hit me like a train. "You played me." My jaw fell when his smirk grew. "You sneaky bastard." "You played me first," he reminded me, leaning in and biting my earlobe gently to back up his point. "Give it back." A pout formed on my lips as he shook his head and waved the diary high above him. Out the corner of my eye, I watched a small folded scrap piece of paper flutter to the floor and hopped down off Zach's waist to get a better look. "What's that?" I asked him despite the fact he wouldn't have ever seen it before and he didn't have X-ray vision. He shrugged as I leaned down to pick it up and gingerly unfolded it. A small message was scrawled on the inside and I recognized the writing immediately. "Meet me here at 1800. I love you, X." Below was an address that I hadn't seen before but recognized the area as a few miles from Ridgeview. "It's a note from my dad," I muttered. I rounded my desk and plopped into the chair, typing the address into my search bar as quickly as I could. "What is it?" Zach asked and I handed him the note. A few seconds later, we were both looking at a small cottage on the computer screen. It looked beautiful and homely but quite remote. "Why do you think they met there?" I asked. "Not sure. Do you recognize it at all?" Zach asked me and I shook my head. "I want to go. Meet whoever lives there. Maybe it's the same person as when they went and if my mom kept it in her diary. It was obviously important," I told him, already halfway out the room when I was pulled around to face him. "I'm coming with you." His tone left no room for argument, but I asked anyway. "Is there any point trying to argue?" "Nope." He grinned victoriously as I nodded. "Liam's coming too, just in case," he stated, still in his no arguments tone. "Anyone else you would like to invite?" I offered sarcastically with an eye roll. "No, the two of us should be enough," he replied. "How many times do I need to remind you that I am alpha? I can manage on my own," I told him. "You don't need to remind me at all. I remember quite well. I also remember that since we met, you've been in danger more times than I can count and kidnapped and locked away twice. We're coming. End of story." He gave me his best daring look, knowing I would probably try to argue and he was ready to win the battle no matter what. But I could see his plead in his eyes along with the worry that constantly resided there, so instead of arguing, I kissed him. The kiss spoke everything we weren't saying to each other. My secret thanks for him coming because I wanted him with me, danger or not. His thanks for not fighting him on the matter. My need for him to understand I was stronger than he knew and his need for me to be safe in his arms. Every thought and emotion poured into our kiss and I was desperately telling him everything with my lips tugging on as well his tongue stroked over my own. "𝐻𝐻𝐸 gross." Liam's voice dripping with disgust pulled us apart and while Zach turned to glare at his brother's interruption, I blushed majorly and buried my head in the crook of his neck. "Liam, get the hell out." Zach barked when he made no move to leave, despite the cold glare he was getting. "Actually, no stay?" I jumped in, putting me on the receiving end of Zach glares before it morphed into confusion. "What?" they both asked, Zach shocked and Liam amused. I rolled my eyes at the both of them and reached for the small slip of paper with the address. "We found this in my mom's diary," I told him, leaving out the detail about how I was practically writing his brother at the time. "Okay," he sent me a questioning look and I want to go to the address, see what I can find. "But Zach insists you both have to come with me. So will you?" I asked hopefully. "You have no idea where it is. What's there? Who's there? Anything?" He raised an incredulous eyebrow. "I searched it and it's a cottage, I think, but I don't know what or who is there. That's why I want to go. See what we can find," I explained, and he nodded in understanding. "Okay, when do you want to go?" he asked us, and I shared a glance with Zach. Now chapter 23. Twigs snapped beneath my feet with every step we took through an overgrown forest. I imagine years ago, it would have been a beautiful place, but now the brambles matted over the muddy ground and the nettles crisscrossed in front of us, blocking our path. "Ugh, stupid nettles," Liam hissed, pushing a long stem out of the way for me to step through. I smiled appreciatively before continuing. "How much further is the damn place?" Zach grumbled, taking my hand and lifting me up onto a large tree trunk that had toppled over, blocking the path. "Another few miles," I told him, using his hand to steady me while I hauled myself up. "This is really bad," Liam huffed. "We're screwed." He followed me up onto the log and steadily. We all tread carefully along it. "The moon doesn't reach its apex for another couple of hours," I told him with a frown. "If we don't make it home in time, we will at least have these woods to roam about in. It's completely deserted," I reminded him. "You're the alpha. Surely you need to be there for the full moon," he snapped back, challenging me with the glint in his eyes. "I can call Tyler and he will take over." "Stop whining," I growled back, and then turned back ahead to see a wide, deep river channel stretching before us with no pathway on the opposite side. Shit. The three of us stared for a long while before Zach turned to me. "Wait here," he ordered firmly, and the temptation to ignore him and plow through the water was high. However, it was a bitterly cold winter's day, and I knew immediately that the water would be even colder. Zach lowered himself off the embankment and into the water until it reached above his waist. He then waded slowly through, his teeth chattering while he did. "What is he doing?" Liam grumbled beside me. When he finally reached the other side, he vanished into the thick of the trees. "Zach," I called. "What the hell was he doing?" A few moments later, he shouted, "Move out the way," before Liam was hauling me to the side. Seconds later, one of the trees opposite us had its branches torn away before it hurtled towards us, creating a bridge. I looked from the tree up to see Zach smirking from the other side. "I could have just crossed, you know," I told him, hopping up and wobbling along the bridge before clasping his hand in mine and hopping down next to him. "I know. I just didn't want to have to listen to Liam complaining for the rest of the journey about how cold he is." He grinned smugly while Liam growled and joined us. "Now you're cold," I pouted. "You can warm me up." He winked before pressing his lips to mine while I wrapped my body around his. I hummed in satisfaction, the warmth of his lips contrasting the cold, damp body that pressed up against mine. Keep it PG, guys. I beg, Liam muttered, avoiding looking at either of us, making me giggle. Let's go, sweetheart. Mona does have a point. The moon will rise soon enough. Zach pecked my cheek and we started to walk. Pretty sure it's Ella who's the moaner. Liam chuckled, earning a slap on his shoulder from me along with a growl. After another half an hour of walking through the dense forest, we reached a large clearing that was cast in the deep blue dusk color. Everything seemed eerily dark since the trees blocked the setting sun and a silvery glow cast over a small cottage from the moon. Strips of fog floated around us, creating a creepy feeling, and the shadows from the forest added to my unease. Creepy, Liam commented while Zach tightened his grip on my hand. The cottage in front of us was small and looked older than it did in the photo. The pale, gray bricks that formed the walls were crumbling slightly, and the ivy sprouting from the walls was thicker and more unruly than the photo. The unmanicured lawn reached my knees with weeds scattered between the blades of grass, slowly overtaking the clearing. A rickety door hung half open on a broken, rotting patio, and several windows of the cottage were shattered. My heart thundered violently as I stepped forward, but I was immediately tugged backwards to face Zach. I'm going first, he insisted. No way. Listen, I told him. It's silent. Nobody is there, I hissed, taking another stride forward. Again, I was sent hurtling backwards, this time straight into Liam, who all but pinned me against him. Let go, I growled, struggling against him. Stop being so stubborn. Sweetheart, you have to hide me, tightening his grip until it hurt to struggle. Eventually, I grumbled beneath my breath and gave up fighting them both. Good girl. Zach nodded and I snarled in reply, making them both chuckle. Disregarding me completely, he stepped forward and put his weight on the first step, causing a groaning creak to echo around us. He continued up to the patio and the entire house groaned beneath his weight, forming a pit in my stomach. There was no way it would support all three of us. Obviously oblivious to this, Liam guided me forwards behind Zach, releasing me so I could climb up. I gently knocked my hand against the wood unrailing running up the side of the staircase, and it cracked away and tumbled to the floor. Don't touch that, I warned, my eyes wide. Slowly, I pulled my foot up to the next step, pressing it down onto the cracked wood before gently shifting my weight. Once I successfully moved without breaking the wood, I continued the process until the top stair crumbled beneath my weight. I squealed when I felt myself sink into the foundation beneath the step. Both Zach and Liam curled a hand around each of my arms, lifting me effortlessly up to stand beside Zach while the porch groaned in protest. You okay, baby? Zach asked me, holding me against him. Yeah, just made me jump, I told him. There is no way I am heavier than you. I pouted with a scowl and he chuckled next to me, smiling down at me. His smile, as per usual, took my breath away, and I was desperate to kiss him senseless, but with Liam stepping carefully up behind me, I restrained myself. Do you really think we will find anything here? It's obviously deserted and looks like it has been for a long time, he grumbled, joining us on the porch. My mom and dad met here for a reason. I shrugged in reply. I want to know why. I didn't care what state the house was in. I wanted answers, and this was the best place to look. If you're scared, Liam, you can just wait here, I smirked. In the foggy woods in the dark while the full moon rises. Have you seen horror movies? No, thank you. He pushed past the two of us and gently tapped the open door, letting it swing the rest of the way. "Great," I muttered, staring into the abyss of darkness in front of us. My stomach nodded, but when Zach once again squeezed my hand, it calmed my racing heart and I suddenly felt braver. I was a werewolf. An alpha. A little darkness and some fog would not scare me. With that in mind, I stepped forward. "Let's go inside then,"